What kind of man commands an army from behind bars? These are the stories of men who not only survived, but controlled the prison. Today's video will reveal the most feared gang leaders in U.S. prison history. Grab a seat if you're ready to meet them. Louis Didone, State, Pennsylvania. Louis Bagels. Didone is an inducted member of the Lucchese family. He served as a captain, then consigliere, and eventually rose to acting boss. Louis Bagels Didone earned his nickname because he partly owned a bagel shop called Bagels by the Bay on Cross Bay Boulevard. This was where he ran most of his illegal rackets. He also operated a car service and was heavily involved in hijacking cigarettes and tires. Didone became an associate of the Canarsie crew under Capo Paul Vario. On August 23, 1982, Didone, Alphonse Darco, and 4 others were officially made members of the Lucchese family. The ceremony was led by boss Anthony Corallo, underboss Salvatore Santoro, Capo Paul Vario, and other members. In late 1988, Lucchese boss Vic Amuso ordered Didone to kill associate Thomas "Red" Gilmore, who was suspected of being an informant. Gilmore ran a chop shop, operated a limousine service, and was involved in loan sharking. On February 5, 1989, Didone, Patty Delarusso, and another associate waited near Gilmore's apartment in Richmond Hills, Queens. They ambushed him and shot him 3 times in the head and neck. In August 1990, Anthony Casso gave Frank Lastarino the order to kill mobster Bruno Facciola. Casso had learned from 2 NYPD detectives, Luis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, both on his payroll, that Facciola was an informant. On August 24, 1990, Frank Lastarino, Louis Didone, and Richard Pagliarulo carried out the murder. Lastarino lured Facciola to a garage in Brooklyn, where they killed him. Didone stuffed a dead canary into Facciola's mouth, then left his body in the trunk of a 1985 Mercury sedan. He abandoned the car on East 55th Street in Canarsie. In early 1991, Didone was promoted to acting capo of the Canarsie crew after Alphonse Darco became acting boss. On May 1, 1992, Didone, along with Robert Molinelli, Raymond Argentina, and Alan Taglianetti, was convicted of conspiring to rob a rapid armored truck company vehicle. Didone received a 5-year prison sentence. The stolen $1.2 million was never recovered. He was paroled in 1996 with strict rules not to contact known criminals for 3 years. Didone almost broke this rule when he allegedly reached out to Lucchese mobster Raymond Argentina. During this time, he was promoted to consigliere. In 2000, after Stephen Crea was indicted on corruption charges, Didone rose to acting boss of the family. On November 15, 2002, Didone was charged along with consigliere Joseph Caridi and a dozen others with racketeering and extortion involving a Long Island strip club called Cinderella, among other businesses. The following month, Didone faced another indictment alongside Caridi, acting capo Johnny Sideburns Cirella, soldier Vincent Vinnie Baldi Salinardi, and 20 others on similar racketeering and extortion charges. In March 2003, Didone was indicted again for racketeering, loan sharking, gambling, and conspiracy to commit murder, tied to the 1989 Gilmore murder and the 1990 Facciola murder, among other crimes. Former Lucchese acting boss Al Darco testified against him. On June 30, 2004, Didone was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of loan sharking and conspiracy in the Gilmore and Facciola murders. As of May 2018, Didone was locked up at the high-security United States Penitentiary in Allenwood, Pennsylvania. Howard Mason, State, Pennsylvania. Howard Pappy. Mason is an American drug trafficker and organized crime figure, Alongside his partner, Lorenzo "Fat Cat" Nichols, Mason ran a drug gang known as the Bebos in the Jamaica neighborhood of Queens, New York City. The crew sold narcotics and earned up to $200,000 a month in profit. While serving time on gun charges, Howard "Pappy" Mason ordered the murder of police officer Edward Byrne in 1988. The killing drew national attention and led to a significant law enforcement crackdown. Just 1 month after the murder, Mason was sentenced to 7 years in prison for the weapons charges. Federal investigators continued building a case against him for Byrne's murder. On December 11, 1989, Mason was convicted on federal charges, including the officer's killing. After 4 years of legal battles and questions about his mental competency, Mason received a life sentence in 1994. He began serving his term at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. Around 2015, he was transferred to the United States Penitentiary, Allenwood. Benjamin Arellano Felix, State, Virginia. Benjamin Arellano Felix, along with his brothers, founded and led the Tijuana Cartel, also known as the Arellano Felix Organization, until his arrest in March 2002. His brothers were Francisco Rafael Arellano Felix, Carlos Arellano Felix, Eduardo Arellano Felix, Ramon Arellano Felix, Luis Fernando Arellano, and Francisco Javier Arellano Felix. Benjamin's first arrest was on June 18, 1982, in Downey, California, for receiving 100 kilos of cocaine smuggled through the San Isidro border. However, he escaped custody. The Arellano Felix brothers got their big break in 1989 when they inherited the cartel from their uncle, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. They had proven their skill by smuggling consumer electronics across the U.S.-Mexico border. By 1998, the brothers faced drug trafficking indictments in the U.S., and Ramon was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. The brothers stayed untouchable for 13 years. They paid about $1 million a week to Mexican politicians and police commanders. After the high-profile murder of Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo in 1993, Benjamin was implicated. This assassination drew international attention to the cartel. Though forced to hide and use fake names, Benjamin remained confident and unafraid of capture. On December 1, 1993, he secretly met with Girolamo Prigione, the apostolic nuncio to Mexico. Soon after, his brother Francisco was arrested on drug charges. Benjamin, Ramon, and Javier became official fugitives. The U.S. DEA discovered that Benjamin's oldest daughter had a rare facial deformity, making her easy to recognize. She became the soft spot in his violent life. By tracking her, authorities found Benjamin. On March 9, 2002, the Mexican army arrested him in Puebla, Mexico. A $2 million bounty was on his head. Officials are unsure where most of Benjamin's money went. Some say he invested in real estate in Tijuana and the U.S., while others believe much of it is hidden as cash in Mexico. Benjamin was extradited to the United States on April 29, 2011, to face cocaine trafficking charges in California. On January 4, 2012, he pleaded guilty to racketeering and money laundering conspiracy. On April 2, 2012, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Some items seized during his arrests are displayed at the Museo del Enervante in Mexico City. As of January 2023, Benjamin is held at the United States Penitentiary, Lee. He is scheduled for release on April 28, 2032. Vincent Basciano, State, Florida. Vincent Basciano became the acting boss of the Bonanno crime family after the arrest of Joseph Massino. In 2011, Basciano was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was arrested in 2004. On May 6, 2006, after a lengthy trial, Basciano was convicted of racketeering, including illegal gambling and attempted murder. However, the jury could not reach a verdict on the 2001 murder of Frank Santoro. Prosecutors later retried Basciano on the unresolved charges. On August 1, 2007, he was found guilty of murdering Santoro, who had tried to kidnap Basciano's son. After Joseph Massino turned government witness in 2004, he claimed that Basciano had plotted to kill federal prosecutor Greg Andres. Although Massino failed a polygraph test, he agreed to wear a wire during a jailhouse meeting with Basciano. In the recordings, jurors heard Basciano declare, "I'm a hoodlum. I'm a tough guy. Whatever happens, happens." Massino was heard reflecting on the fall of the crime family, saying, "We was okay until I got pinched. We was on top of the world." Although Massino failed to get a clear confession about the plot against Andres, he did capture Basciano, admitting he had ordered the killing of associate Randolph "Randy" Pizzolo. On May 16, 2011, Basciano was convicted of ordering Pizzolo's murder in 2004. On June 1, a jury rejected the prosecution's push for the death penalty and instead sentenced him to life in prison. Basciano first served his sentence at ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado. He was later moved to USP Florence High, then to USP Big Sandy, and is now held at United States Penitentiary Coleman. Alan Posey, State, Mississippi. Alan Posey controlled the criminal activities of the Simon City Royals gang within the Mississippi Department of Corrections. His influence extended beyond prisons, with members and associates carrying out operations in Mississippi, Louisiana, and other areas. Federal prosecutors stated, Posey personally ordered the murders of rival gang leaders and took part in drug trafficking and money laundering, according to court documents cited by the U.S. Attorney's Office for Northern Mississippi. The details about his targets were not shared. His gang smuggled large amounts of methamphetamine, marijuana, and other drugs into dozens of Mississippi state prisons, the news release said. In early October, Posey pleaded guilty. At his sentencing, U.S. District Judge Michael P. Mills called the gang a diabolical organization. He sentenced Posey to 20 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. This defendant committed countless crimes, said U.S. Attorney Clay Joyner. Now he will spend nearly the rest of his life in prison. Protecting our communities from violent gangs is always our top priority. Edgar Valdez Villarreal, State, Florida. Valdez rose to lead Los Negros, an enforcement gang involved in a territorial battle against Los Zetas in the Nuevo Laredo region. Los Negros orchestrated kidnappings and recruited operatives, including corrupt police officers, military personnel, and federal agents, according to reports from the Attorney General's office. Though the group was allegedly under Valdez's direct control, it had previously been managed by the Beltran Leyva cartel. Mexican media reports state that after the death of Arturo Beltran Leyva on December 16, 2009, Valdez began challenging the leadership of the cartel and its territory. By 2010, Valdez, along with Gerardo Alvarez Vasquez, led one faction, while Arturo's brother Hector Beltran Leyva and his lieutenant Sergio Villarreal Barragan headed another. On August 22, 2010, 4 decapitated bodies were found hanging from a bridge in Cuernavaca. There was a warning message for anyone helping Valdez, stating that a similar fate would befall them. On the morning of January 25, 2010, football player Salvador Cabañas was shot in the head. CCTV footage later revealed that Jose Jorge J.J. Balderas Garza was the shooter. According to Valdez's statements, he sheltered J.J. to protect him from the police, hiding him in one of his safe houses due to their friendship. Mexican police had been searching for Valdez since his 2002 indictment on 2 counts of conspiracy with intent to distribute marijuana. During their investigation, authorities raided properties he had rented, uncovering grenades, automatic weapons, and police uniforms. In May 2009, Mexican officials listed him as one of their 24 most wanted drug traffickers, offering a 30 million peso, $2.3 million reward for information leading to his capture. Valdez pleaded not guilty and took out advertisements in the local Monterrey newspaper, El Norte, where he described himself as a legitimate businessman who had been forced to leave Nuevo Laredo and move to the neighboring state of Coahuila because he was being harassed for bribes by local police officers. In June 2010, Valdez was indicted in a U.S. court on charges of trafficking thousands of kilograms of cocaine from Mexico into the United States between 2004 and 2006. Mexican officials claim that Valdez introduced about 1 ton of cocaine per month into the U.S. In 2009, the Justice Department posted a $2 million reward for information leading to his capture. Mexican police said they tracked Valdez across 5 Mexican states for a year, a pursuit that intensified in the final months as they raided house after house owned by the drug lord. Though they missed him, they arrested several of his allies. On August 30th, 2010, Valdez was captured by Mexican federal police near Mexico City. On September 30th, 2015, Valdez Villarreal was extradited to the United States, along with 12 other criminals, including former high-ranking Gulf cartel leader Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez. In June 2018, he was sentenced to 49 years in a U.S. federal prison. Larry Hoover, State, Illinois. Hoover is the founder of the Gangster Disciples, a Chicago street gang that extended to multiple cities in different states over time. In 1969, Larry Hoover and David Barksdale agreed to end their rivalry and merge their gangs into one group. From being the Supreme Gangsters and the Black Disciples, they became known as the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. On the night of February 26, 1973, 19-year-old William Pookie Young was kidnapped and shot dead in an alley near 68th Street and Union Avenue in Englewood, on Chicago's South Side. Hoover had ordered the hit after Young was named as one of 3 people accused of stealing drugs and money from the gang 6 days earlier. Police arrested Andrew Howard on March 16th. Hoover went into hiding but was caught on September 21st whilst driving a stolen truck. He attempted to flee the scene but was subsequently arrested. Officers soon learned he was wanted for Young's murder. In October, a grand jury indicted both men for the killing. By December, they were sentenced to between 150 and 200 years in prison. Hoover was sent to Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois, to begin serving his sentence. In 1974, after David Barksdale died from kidney failure caused by injuries from a 1970 assassination attempt, Hoover took control of the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. While already in prison for murder, Hoover was indicted on August 22, 1995. This followed a 17-year undercover investigation by the Illinois Department of Corrections, the FBI, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Hoover faced charges including conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, drug crimes, and running a criminal enterprise. Federal agents used wiretaps to build their case. Prosecutors said Hoover's gang had 30,000 soldiers across 35 states and made $100 million a year. They arrested Hoover at Dixon Correctional Center and moved him to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago for trial. In 1997, Hoover was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 3 more life terms in federal prison. He served his sentence at ADX Florence in Fremont County, Colorado. On May 28, 2025, Donald Trump commuted Hoover's federal prison sentence. However, Hoover still has to serve his state sentence of 150 to 200 years for the 1973 murder conviction. He is eligible to apply for parole on that charge because the crime happened before Illinois ended discretionary parole in 1978. Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez, State, Florida. Costilla Sanchez joined the Gulf Cartel in the late 1990s and rose to become a lieutenant under then-leader Ociel Cardenas Guillen. The Gulf Cartel is responsible for smuggling and distributing thousands of kilograms of cocaine and marijuana into the United States every year. After Ociel Cardenas was arrested, Costilla Sanchez took control and partnered with Antonio Cardenas Guillen, Heriberto Lascano, and Hector Manuel Sauceda Gamboa, also known as El Cariz. Sauceda was killed in a gunfight with federal police on February 17, 2009. Then, in 2010, Heriberto Lascano turned Los Zetas into his own cartel, becoming a rival to the Gulf Cartel. On the 18th of January 2010, several members of the Gulf Cartel kidnapped Victor Peña Mendoza, a leader of Los Zetas nicknamed Concord 3, and a close associate and friend of Miguel Trevino Morales, also known as Z40. While he was held captive, Peña Mendoza was asked to switch alliances and join the Gulf Cartel, but he refused. This refusal earned him a beating and an execution, presumably carried out by Samuel Flores Borrego. Trevino Morales heard about the incident and issued an ultimatum to Flores Borrego and Costilla Sanchez. "Hand over the assassin of my friend, you son of a bitch. You have until the 25th. If you don't comply, there will be war." Both Gulf Cartel leaders ignored the command, and Trevino Morales did not wait to avenge his friend's death. On the 30th of January 2010, Trevino Morales kidnapped and murdered 16 Gulf Cartel members in Reynosa, Tamaulipas. This marked the start of the cartel war between the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas in the Mexican states of Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, and Veracruz. On the morning of June 28, 2010, Rodolfo Torre Cantú, the leading candidate for the Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, in the Tamaulipas state elections, was on his way to the airport in Ciudad Victoria. He was preparing to close his campaign in Valle Hermoso and Matamoros, Tamaulipas, just 6 days before the election. While traveling, Torre Cantú's convoy was ambushed by armed attackers. The attack killed Torre Cantú and 6 others in his group. His death became the most high-profile murder in the Mexican drug war and the most notable political assassination in Mexico since in 1994. By 2011 and 2012, Mexican authorities still lacked solid evidence to charge anyone for Torre Cantú's murder. However, on September 20th, 2012, both the Mexican Attorney General's Office, PGR, and the DEA linked Costilla Sanchez to Torre Cantú's assassination. Reports say Torre Cantú was killed by an armed squad directly connected to Costilla Sanchez because he refused to protect the cartel's investments, which involved laundering money from drug sales. The Mexican Navy arrested Costilla Sanchez on the 12th of September, 2012, at the residential Lomas de Rosales neighborhood in Tampico, Tamaulipas. On September 30th, 2015, Costilla Sanchez was extradited to the United States, along with 12 others. On October 1st, he declared himself not guilty of the charges imposed at a federal court in Brownsville, Texas. On the 26th of September, 2017, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to possess narcotics with intent to distribute cocaine and cannabis, in addition to 2 counts of assault on federal agents for the standoff in 1999. He was also charged with threatening U.S. law enforcement officers in November 1999. During that incident, FBI and DEA agents in Mexico were stopped at gunpoint by heavily armed men, including Costilla Sanchez and other cartel leaders. They pointed AK-47 rifles at the agents and threatened to kill them. After a tense standoff, the agents were allowed to leave. His sentencing was originally scheduled for the 18th of January, 2018. On the 22nd of September, 2022, Costilla Sanchez was sentenced to life in prison and was ordered to pay a forfeiture judgment of $5 million, the amount that he was found to have profited from his involvement in the drug trafficking. Gerald Prince Miller, State, Pennsylvania. The Supreme Team was a street gang organized in the early 1980s in the vicinity of the Baisley Park houses in Jamaica, Queens, New York, by a group of teenagers who were members of the 5% Nation. Under the leadership of Kenneth Supreme McGriff, with Miller, his nephew, as second in command, the gang concentrated its criminal efforts on the widespread distribution of crack cocaine. After McGriff went to jail in 1987, leadership of the Supreme Team was assumed by Gerald Prince Miller. During 1987 alone, Miller and the then incarcerated McGriff ordered at least 8 homicides. In late 1987, while Gerald Miller was serving time on state charges, a task force consisting of NYPD and FBI agents raided several locations tied to the Supreme Team. Even though the gang was warned shortly before the raid and managed to remove 11 kilograms of cocaine and $200,000, authorities still seized a stash of weapons, drug paraphernalia, documents, photographs, criminal instruction manuals, 1 kilogram of cocaine, and thousands of dollars in cash. After this raid and his arrest by federal agents, Kenneth McGriff gave the order to shut down the gang's operations. When Miller got out of prison in the spring of 1989, he quickly started to rebuild the Supreme Team. He regained control of 2 of its most profitable drug-dealing spots. The Supreme Team soon re-established its grip on the local drug trade. Alongside its drug business, the gang also brought back its violent tactics, including murder. The government presented trial evidence, some of which did not lead to convictions, of killings that occurred both before the gang's shutdown in 1987 and after its return in 1989. In February 2007, McGriff was found guilty in federal court of racketeering, drug trafficking, 2 murder-for-hire killings, and laundering drug money. Though prosecutors sought the death penalty, he was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Luis Felipe, State, Colorado. Luis Felipe, also known as King Blood, is a Cuban-American and the founder of the New York chapter of the Latin Kings street gang. In 1995, he was convicted of ordering several murders from behind bars by sending written instructions to gang members on the outside. Judge John S. Martin Jr. sentenced Felipe to life in prison plus 45 years. The judge also imposed stringent conditions. They were so extreme that they surprised even the prosecutors. Felipe was ordered to serve his time in solitary confinement. He was banned from receiving visitors or writing to anyone except for his lawyer. Since Felipe has no close relatives, this rule cut off nearly all outside contact. Judge Martin also took the rare step of declaring that he would control the terms of Felipe's confinement. Although a federal appeals court later stated that only the Attorney General and the Bureau of Prisons typically manage such matters, it also ruled that courts may impose special restrictions on inmates convicted under racketeering laws. Felipe is currently serving his sentence at ADX Florence. Whitey Bulger, State, West Virginia. James Joseph Whitey Bulger Jr. was a notorious American crime boss who led the Winter Hill Gang, an Irish mob based in Somerville, Massachusetts, near Boston. In December 1994, after learning from his FBI handler, John Connolly, about a looming RICO indictment, Bulger vanished and remained a fugitive for 16 years. Despite his denials, the FBI revealed Bulger had been an informant since 1975, providing intel on the Italian mafia's Patriarca crime family. In return, Connolly shielded Bulger's gang from law enforcement scrutiny. By 1997, revelations about Bulger's ties to corrupt officials sparked major scandals, embarrassing multiple government agencies. 5 years into his flight, Bulger was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, second only to Osama bin Laden in notoriety. He was finally captured in 2011, alongside his longtime girlfriend Catherine Greig in Santa Monica, California. Bulger faced trial in 2013, charged with racketeering, money laundering, extortion, weapons violations, and involvement in 19 murders. He was found guilty on 31 counts and linked to 11 murders. Sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus 5 years, Bulger was incarcerated at USP Coleman II in Florida. In October 2018, after being transferred to several facilities, Bulger was beaten to death in the United States Penitentiary, Hazleton in West Virginia, just hours after arrival. If you enjoy the way we create videos and would like us to bring more cases like this to light, please hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth dives.